What's up? Welcome to episode number 130 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choate. If you're new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians and other entertainment types about their lives and careers. The conversation is casual, but I also ask everyone to highlight the people they love, who've influenced them, inspired them, or supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's peoplewelovepodcast.com, and the Instagram handle is at peoplewelovepodcast. I am at Adam Choate on Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow me, and please be sure to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. I appreciate that. And of course, 5-star positive reviews on Apple Podcasts are greatly appreciated. For today's episode, we have guest paralegal and secretary for the Libertarian National Party, Caryn Ann Harlos, most often diving into the weeds of politics and Libertarian Party politics. With this conversation, I was lucky to learn much more about Caryn Ann, the person, and her story, which has certainly been a journey. Nor autism, nor OCD, nor dysfunctional relationships in her past, nor LP party politics can hold her back. And she definitely appreciates her husband being on the journey with her. That's the one and only LP chair of Colorado himself, Wayne Harlos. But let's just get into it. Here's Caryn Ann Harlos. So it's good to see you today, Caryn Ann Harlos. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, for sure. How are you holding up during whatever year this is?
It's just been it's always super busy. It's just a different kind of busy, but this is a good kind of busy, I guess,
You seem like you're in a good mood. You seem upbeat, smiling, so things must be going pretty well.
Well, I'm usually pretty upbeat. I can be down, but
I've seen you have your moments as well.
I have my moments, but I get over it though as well too. But yeah, things are going well. So that's what I meant by a good kind of busy rather than the bad kind of busy, I suppose.
Yeah, I hear you. Like I was saying before we started recording, this might be a little bit different than a lot of the typical political or libertarian type podcasts you go on, where you're diving a lot into the issues and the inner workings of Libertarian Party and whatnot. So I want to kind of talk a little bit more about you and your history and your story. And I usually start fairly early on in people's journey. So where you can tell me a little bit about your background, like where you're from, and really what jumps out at you, even at an early age, earliest memories when you were 3, 4, 5 years old. I kind of even ask people to recall for me
Lord,
if they got
mercy.
it.
Well, no, I was born on a cold winter day. No, born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, but we moved down to Florida, South Florida, when I was super, super young. My dad was involved with crime, and we were fleeing Connecticut as a family because I suppose he was in some kind of trouble with the crime groups. This is funny that I'm a libertarian now, because everything he did, I would think should be legal today. But my dad was a minor drug dealer and a bookie. Ran a little prostitution, did a little bit of everything. Yeah. So we came down to Florida because he was in some kind of trouble up there. Now, they're both passed away, my mother and my father. I would not be revealing any of this if they were still living, out of just respect, for them. But they've been passed away a long, long time.
Wow, that's a lot right there. I don't even know if I'm supposed to know all this, but like you said, it's
again,
past the statute of limitations or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, and my dad was in jail for what he did, so it isn't even a secret. He died soon after getting out of jail, so he was convicted. So it's not even a secret. Anyone could look up his record, but I still wouldn't be speaking about him if he was still, alive. That'd be his story to tell. But my dad's been gone about 20 something years now, so it's been a while.
Wow, that is quite a story already. Damn. How long were you in Bridgeport for, did you say?
I was only just 6 months old. Then we moved down. Yeah, we fled to South Florida.
And that's where you kind of grew up, kindergarten through high school or whatever kind of
Pompano Beach, Florida.
What do you remember about like elementary school and like I guess your family might be of something prominent. What's going on in your family jumps out at you. Like what are memories of like elementary school? Did you have siblings also?
Yeah, I had a half brother and a half sister. Um, I don't even know how much detail. I'm pretty much an open book, as you
You
know.
can share
Uh,
whatever you want to share.
okay, I am like an open book, as you know. And when I say my father, I mean the man who raised me. I found out when I was a teenager that um, the man who was raising me wasn't really my father, but he didn't know. So my mother told me that when I was 16. Don't ever do that to your kids because you're mad at your spouse. That's like a terrible burden. So I didn't start exploring or trying to find who my biological father was until he passed away. Because I just thought that was the shittiest thing for a woman to do to a guy, to trick him. You know, she was pregnant and she was, I guess, doing something on the side and was going out with him. And she knew I wasn't his, but said it was. So she would have someone to raise the kid. That's like a crappy thing. So he never knew. I still don't know who my biological father is, but I've done the 23andMe and with my half sister trying to narrow. And the half sister isn't from their marriage. It was a half sister from my mom's prior marriage. So, um, anyway, I don't know who my biological father was. So that's something that I really remember. It was a really, really dysfunctional childhood. I mean, I was super spoiled in a lot of ways, but I guess that made up for just like, it was very, very dysfunctional.
Yeah, like the whole foundations and the environment, and like and the how it all came together seems definitely unusual. But in terms of like the day-to-day lifestyle or whatever, or the life as a kid, it sounds like you had maybe even a fairly normal childhood. Did you
Uh,
get good grades? What kind of stuff were you into as like an elementary school kid?
well, um, for one thing, I wouldn't call it at all normal. Both my mom and dad at first were raging alcoholics. My father, though, he had a iron will. He quit smoking and drinking on the very same day and never looked back and drank again. Because when I was a toddler, I was sitting on my mother's lap and he meant to throw a punch at her and he clocked me right in the face instead
Damn.
because he was drunk and his aim wasn't very good. Now, that didn't stop him from, the problem wasn't that he was trying to hit my mother, it was that he hit his daughter. And his aim wasn't very good because they had a violent relationship for the entirety of their marriage. But he quit drinking that day because he accidentally hit a toddler. And he went on to continue to be a bartender for the rest of his life while being a recovering alcoholic. But he never gave in. He had an iron will, that man.
Wow. But what about you as a kid? What kind of like I was saying, what kind of
Mhm.
things were you into? What were your interests and whatnot?
Was we were saying in the pre-show, I'm autistic, but I wasn't diagnosed as a child. So now looking back with a diagnosis as an adult, my childhood, it makes a lot more sense because I was a very strange child, but they just attributed it to being a very strange child. I was just an autistic child. Um, so I had a lot of very singular interests the way autistic people do. So, collections, a lot of collections. But I grew up around horses. I was the little girl whose dad did buy her a pony. So that shaped a lot of my childhood. I was very, very much involved with horses. And I had my own horse from like the age of 12 up, maybe. No. When did I get the horse? I had riding lessons my whole life. So it's hard to remember when I got my own, but they had always indulged that and rented horses or got me riding lessons or things like that.
What was it about horses that you loved? They're just beautiful, they're graceful, they're fun to
Yeah,
ride. It's a
just
connection
always.
to take care of an animal. It's to take care of an animal. You form a connection. Is all those things.
Yeah, well, horses kind of like dogs. They evolved in very early with man. And I do think there's some kind of like evolutionary biological connection, like there is with dogs. If you've ever watched any of those documentaries about the co-evolution of dogs, it's really quite fascinating. But horses are a lot like that. You can develop a bond with a horse like you can with a dog.
Interesting. What you remember your first horse's name?
Yes, Juanita girl, quarter
Juanita
horse.
girl. Wow. And you would just ride the horse? Were you in any sort of formal competitions or
Oh yeah, showed
organized?
all over the state. We did my second. Now she wasn't very good at showing. We ended up selling her to be a brood mare because she had a very good pedigree, and then we bought a better for show horse, and his name was Salty, and I did really really well with him, and we showed all over the state.
What does that mean when you say show? Not breeding race horses. You mean like showing like displaying like just
Yeah,
like a
there's
physical
competitions.
specimen, like a physical specimen, and like doing like jump tricks and things like that, like those types
Oh,
of.
see, people not in the horse world. Anyone in the horse world is probably going right now. No, there's, it's, how do you, I guess you would, I mean, it's classes that are competition classes. So just different types of skills. So there's different styles of riding, like Western riding, there's saddle seat English riding, there's hunt seat English riding, there is equestrian tricks. Now we didn't jump. It wasn't jumping. It was more pleasure riding competition.
Sounds like so that was probably obviously sounds like it was a big part of your world
Yes,
was the
yes.
horses.
Yeah, I didn't even learn how to drive till I was after 18 because I was too into the horses.
Did you where in Florida did you say you spent?
Pompano Beach, Florida.
Did you ride a horse like down the boardwalk or something like
Uh,
that?
it's weird. There's a city-owned stable in Pompano Beach called Sand and Spurs, and you actually buy like stall units. It's like a stable condo. You buy a unit and you pay a monthly maintenance fee, but it's owned by the city. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. So it was right in the heart of town, but they had a lot of land. So there were a bunch of young girls there, who had horses, kept you out of trouble, kept you away from the boys. But I discovered the boys soon enough. But
I gather. I guess so. Tell me more about like what was your like school life like? Were you a good student? Did you get along with other people? Like you said you had were kind of an interesting kid in general. How did that all come
um,
together in school, your school life?
so had terrible middle school time because that's when kids start developing into big bullies when middle school can be. And again, in Florida, it's middle school. Other states, I understand it might be called junior high or whatever. So in Florida, you have middle school, which is 6, 7, 8, and then high school, which is 9, 10, 11, 12. I know other states might be a little different. So in middle school, I was terribly, terribly, terribly bullied. But when I went to high school, I went to a different high school by choice than anybody I was in middle school with. And pretty much made a conscious decision to reinvent myself at that point. I kind of figured out why I was getting bullied and never really had that problem again. And in fact, was pretty popular in high school in like a weird kind of way. I was the quirky girl, but was elected class president in 10th grade. So went from really being like the kid that was picked on all the time to being fairly the popular girl.
How does that switch happen? Because I've and that sort of epiphany or whatever you want to call it. Because I talked to a few people who've had that moment where it's like, yeah, I went to a new place and I just totally changed my personality. But was it like, I mean, obviously you don't want to be bullied, you don't want to have a
Yeah.
bad time, you want to have people, you want to get along with people, but like, how do you go about making that like change? Is it a moment? Is it like something you saw on TV? Is it a book you read? Somebody's talked to you, the parents, something from your parents? Like, where and how does that change occur?
I, you
And
know, I
quickly.
don't, I don't even know. I just remember distinctly it was a decision that I made. Like, but I did a lot of weird, I kind of call them experiments on myself when I was a kid, and some of them have held till this day. Like anyone who sees my Facebook posts notice that I tend to spell things with British spellings because I just got this wild hair up my ass in like 8th grade to see if I could, how long it would take to develop a habit that would last. And one of those was spelling words that way. And still to this day, I don't even think about it. That's just how I spell things, the OUR spellings. And I put a little line through my sevens and a thing through my zeros. I just, for some, and it isn't even like I was an Anglophile or anything. I just thought that would be an interesting self experiment to see if I could just, and it lasts to this day now, decades and decades later. So I think it was just a choice like that. I like examined the things that I was getting picked on for and just changed it and decided I didn't care. I've always been the type of person. I'll tell you a story that will exemplify this. I went to Disney World in Florida with a friend of mine, and I don't, it's just me. I'm very flamboyant and exhibitionist in a way. And I don't mean that like in the dirty way. I just mean it in the just, way. And by the end of the day, she looked straight at me and she was like, I'm a nervous wreck. She goes, you are the most unself-conscious person I've ever met in my entire life. And you did not realize for a second we were getting stared at all day. Meanwhile, that's all I could be aware of. And she just was rattled. And I'm like, really? But I walk through life like that. Don't even notice, don't care. I'm going to be me. I don't care. You don't like it? Then go someplace else. I don't know what to tell you.
That's
And
great. That's great.
kind of the same today, quite obviously.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I need to be more like that. I'm somewhere in between you and your friend. Was this a recent, was this visit?
No, this was, oh God, maybe 20 years ago. I'm still friends with her, by the way, but yeah, maybe 20 years ago. Way pre-libertarian times. But like people say to me, oh, I love that you have pink hair. I couldn't pull that off. That's an incomprehensible statement to me. What do you mean you couldn't pull off? You mean you don't think it would look good on you? No, what they're saying is they couldn't take the fact that everyone would be looking at you.
That's really, I think that is what people mean when they like respond to a question like that. Why don't you have pink hair if you like it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a cop out saying, oh, it wouldn't look good on me, but really it's like I don't have the balls to do it or whatever. That's essentially what people are saying.
Well, my hairdresser said that to me when I came in the first time, and I was like, yep, dye the whole thing pink. She's like, you mean just like a few chunks, like what's the style? And I'm like, nope, the whole thing. She's like, you've got some big balls.
There you go.
But it doesn't even occur to me that way. Like, this isn't an act of courage. It's just my personality. Like, and I've always just worn whatever I want. I don't care. And that's just always how I've been. Like, I just really, and this can sound bad and it can sound good, but I really do not care what people think about me, and never have. I mean, obviously everyone wants to be liked, but if this is who I am and someone doesn't like it, I like really don't care. Fundamentally, I can't even make myself care.
You know what? I've come to the conclusion it's more like only care about what the people who you care think about you. Why do I care what people who I don't care about me? I'm only worried about the opinions of people I value and care about myself.
And usually you value them because the relationship has co-evolved, where obviously they like you. So, it grew together, but like strangers or people who aren't going to like me no matter what anyway. I really just don't care.
No, that's good. Tell me about becoming the high school president in high school sophomore, because you said you kind of became popular. So I'm guessing you were maybe popular or known or whatever.
I was known. I guess that's a little bit different than being popular, because popular assumes like, oh, you have a lot of boyfriends or you're friends with the hip girls. No,
yeah. Well, who was your friend group?
Did you have the weirdos?
Yeah,
the group of weirdos. But kids are very self-conscious, and I think in a way, because I just never have been, people were attracted to that, so that made me kind of popular in a way. Plus, I went to a magnet school. I don't know if you know what that is. I don't know if they have those everywhere as well. That's how I was able to get away from that group of just horrible girls in middle school. A magnet school is usually in an economically depressed area, probably, and could have a high minority population, and they're trying to actually reverse integrate the school. So they get a lot of federal, I think it is, money, and have a certain specialty program. So what I went into was a pre-engineering program. I didn't really give a shit about engineering. I just did well on the test. I wanted to get away from the horrid girls in middle school, so I'd tell them whatever they wanted. And so I was like in the it would be the equivalent of like the gifted class, but it was in the magnet school class. So my class was super small and we were really coddled by the teachers because the money was following us. Now I didn't realize a lot of this, till later. But what's interesting is this school, and anyone in Florida will know this school. It's Blanche Ely High School. And this, in a way, I think shaped a lot of my social views today. The school at the time I went to, it was probably 99% Black. The exact opposite of the experience of a Black person usually, who are there in the minority. No, if you were white or not Hispanic, you were in the extreme minority. So at that time, because the neighborhood I grew up in was all white, it wasn't very integrated, but because I chose to go to that school, I became comfortable always around a very, very multi-ethnic just group. And I'm not comfortable now. Like in Castle Rock, this is the whitest place I've ever seen in my life. Like that's not cool to me. And when I finally, became an adult in Florida, and then I moved to Boynton, the neighborhood we moved in was also very multi-ethnic. And that's more what I prefer, but I think a lot of that comes from my choices in high school. I think a lot of the attitude you have as an adult, it's during your formative years. It's hard to have negative feelings or be prejudiced against people you grew up around. They're just people like you.
Sure. Do you still keep in touch with any of the weirdos that you were in the weird group with in high school?
No, no, I tend to be the type of person, and again, it's related to the autism. It's very difficult for me to make long-term friends. So I have friends that are friends for a while, but once we're not in the same activities, it tends not to last.
That's natural though.
Yeah, but some people will have, like, now I have people I've known a long time, and I also use the word friend very loosely, which tends to bite me in the ass. If you're not an asshole and I know you and we've had a few conversations, you're a friend. I know people you will tend to reserve that term for something a lot more intimate, but for me, no. Like, so I make casual friends really, really easy. I don't make close friends really easy.
What about your campaign sophomore year? What do you remember about actually like the events of becoming president? Was that like thrilling for you? Were you surprised? How did the school react to that?
It was fun. It's funny now considering that I ran a political campaign when I was in 10th grade, but it was just fun planning out, doing the flyers and the campaigning and all of that. But I'm super, super competitive, like really horribly competitive. So that was fun. Just to win, it was fun.
Were you involved in sports or other activities
The
in high school?
horses.
Oh, the horses and the politics.
Yep.
Basically,
Well, that after that, well, no, I was involved in politics, I guess, the whole time I was in high school. Never mind. I was going to say I wasn't very political. It wasn't until I was an adult that I decided I hated politics. I liked it as a kid.
Did you have like personal politics or ideology when you were like, a kid, middle school, high school, growing up? Were you like did you identify as like a Democrat or something like that?
Oh yeah, my parents were very liberal, so I identified as a Democrat. Was very passionate about feminism and things like that as a teenager.
Sure. And like, what about junior, senior year of high school? Did you have thoughts about like next phase of your life, whether you're going to go to college or work or do something? Like, where were you at with plans?
That was the delayed discovery of boys in senior year. So,
oh boy.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I ran off with a boy.
Ran off? Where were you running off to?
Just to get away from parents. His mother was very, kind of tragic, troubled kids type of thing. His mother had melanoma and passed away.
Damn.
So he was dealing with that. I had my own screwed up family life. So we just ran off. We just ran away together one day.
And just hanging out in Florida together, or did you
we moved in together and set up house basically for a couple of years.
And what were you working at the time or studying?
I
forgot
anything? What I was doing. I think I was working in fast food, like
yeah.
Wendy's. I don't really remember. But But then I ended up getting a job at Service Merchandise, which is another blast from the past. And I had a career at Service Merchandise. I was there for a
I
really
remember
long time.
Service Merchandise. I remember their catalogs. They had a lot of good stuff,
Yeah,
electronics
I ended
department,
up
all
being
that.
office manager and internal audit and bookkeeper for Service Merchandise for many, many years. And then I went to paralegal school, and that's how I ended up getting into paralegal stuff.
Gotcha. And what made you decide to get into the paralegal world?
I don't know. I just always been interested in law, and it just seemed to be a natural fit for the type of skills I had. I've got a lot of like really secretarial type skills, executive secretarial type skills, which fits with what I'm doing now with the LP. But yeah, I just, was very, very detail oriented in what I was doing at Service Merchandise with the inventory control and bookkeeping. And it just seemed like a natural fit where I could make a lot of money.
Smart. Were you an avid reader at the time as well?
Yes. But that's the one gift my mom gave me from my earliest memory. I was reading before we were taught to read. My mom was a big reader, and there used to be those book of the month clubs that some people may remember, where you'd automatically get sent it if you didn't. It was like the Columbia Record Club, but it was for books. So even as a kid, I'd read all her books. So they were for adults. Now, of course, there was stuff in them that probably you shouldn't be reading as a kid, but was always a huge reader. And I think that was what made me good in school and why I have a large vocabulary today and can do a lot of the things that I do today. But before, like my earliest memory, she bought me the entire Nancy Drew collection, and I read that. She was just always buying me books. I love to read.
And really, fiction, nonfiction, obviously,
Anything.
anything. I admire that. That's like the version of being able to like flip through the channels and watch lots of different things, but really flip through different books and literally get through all of them and read. Because I feel like you have to be to do what you do and to dive in the weeds, whether it be with paralegal work and legalese or Robert's rules and all this stuff. There's no way I think you can really fully grasp those things without being an avid reader and have good reading comprehension skills.
Yeah, and even it's served me even today, because I generally have a larger vocabulary than a lot of people. Caused me some problems in my first marriage, only because sometimes people with less of a vocabulary, who maybe aren't so secure in themselves, think that you're talking down to them when you use certain words, but you're not. They're just natural to you.
That's what I was just thinking. I'm picturing a scene like, what are you trying to say about me? No, that's not as bad as you think. I'm just describing this situation.
We had a fight about the word ambivalent when he asked me something, and I said, well, I'm ambivalent about that. And he got super angry, thought I was talking down. Well, I don't even know what that means. Why are you using words I don't know what it means? And I go, well, it means like, kind of, it means I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other. He goes, well, why didn't you just say that? I go, because it kind of means that there are shades of meeting. There's a mood to the meeting. The precise word for how I felt was ambivalent. Wasn't trying to be, but I realized as you're growing up, if you grow up reading and with a large vocabulary, it's true, you sense a mood to a word and you can define it, but using the definition and substitute isn't exactly the same thing. And the same thing happened when I started studying Spanish, like where some people had said, when you learn another language, there are some words that there isn't an exact duplicate for in the other language. And a lot of people say that. And for instance, for me, it's like the Spanish word verdad, which is like truth, but it's truth in like a different way than the English truth. I don't know. So it's words have always I'm really into words. If you have
you add letters to that. You add your own letters to them when you don't even need them.
Yeah. I'm very, very into words. I'm probably going to be doing another show. I've talked about it on my show before. I already have a name and everything. I just haven't had the time to do it. Discussing, because I'm a big history buff and I'm a big word buff, and I want to combine the two together. So maybe bringing up some historical words, some of those old words that, like, I hate when words die. I don't know if you've ever seen that old YouTube series. Anyone who hasn't seen this, you need to look this up. There used to be this skit called Hope is Emo during the emo time. If you haven't seen Hope is Emo, look it up. It is hilarious. But is a Hope is Emo segment called The Words Are Dying. And it's hilarious, but it's like so true in a way too. So it always fascinates me that words like fall out of favor and it's organic. Like a bunch of humans don't sit around and go, we're just not going to use this word anymore.
Sometimes they do, I think.
Sometimes, well, today, because it's bad and you're not allowed, but I'm talking.
Yeah, organically it happens too.
Yeah, organically it happens. Or the great vowel shift that happened between Middle English and Modern English. It's just really interesting to me the way that stuff happens.
It sounds like your mom had a big influence on you reading, like you were saying. Did she take a strong interest in just like your educational development, or like you developing in general and having different interests? Was she like, I care about your math homework too. Don't just spend all your time reading fiction books.
Yeah.
Or was it more just the reading stuff?
That's one advantage I think I had in my childhood is, well, because my parents were too busy fighting with each other. So maybe I'm looking at it in the rosy side, but they let and indulged every interest I had and didn't say, well, you're neglecting X. So if I was into horses, they got me a horse, they got me riding lessons, they went all in. I'm into reading and books. So, I had a huge library. I was into music. They bought me, I used to be a bass player in a death metal band. That's a whole other story. But like anything I wanted to do, they indulged, because I think they felt guilty because they weren't the greatest parents because they were always fighting and beating up on each other. So they spoiled me as compensation for having such a crappy home life. So in a way, I had a great home life. Like I was really got anything I wanted, but I probably would have preferred not having a dad that beat up his mom. But
yeah, that's awful. I'm sorry to hear all that too. I mean, it's not obligatory. I should say that. That's like, that it's amazing. Your story is amazing already, and I didn't even know like any of this about you. It's like pretty inspiring to like just to hear everything you're telling me up to this point.
Yeah, no, it was pretty traumatic though. It's hard to know whether or not, because I also, obviously, I've already said I had autism, but I also have obsessive compulsive disorder. And when people say that, it kind of drives me crazy when people are like, oh, I like things straight on my desk, I have OCD. That's not what OCD is. It really isn't. OCD is horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Though as an adult, so I think, but OCD is ultimately an anxiety disorder. A lot of people don't know that. It comes from a place of anxiety. So I do think the very troubled childhood is what led to it.
I'm sure.
Yes, because as an adult, it's really calmed down. But when I get anxious, it springs back up again. But I had it super, super, super bad as a child, that there's a lot of memories with just super, super OCD things. But back then, the parents would throw open the front door and be like, come home before dark. It isn't like today. Like some of the things I did as a kid, where I went, like that my parents had no idea. Like today, they probably would have been turned into the state. Like she'd give me bus money and I would just take the bus and go hundreds of miles, like around the whole county. I went to every mall in the county in Broward County, Florida. It was insane. But the bus driver didn't think nothing of an 11, 12-year-old just hopping on the bus then.
Yeah, different
that's just
times.
the way it was.
Better times in many ways, I would say.
Oh, well, I think so, because I was always very independent because of that. So I think that certainly shows through today.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like you're like the type of kid and even type of person who like, not that it's wrong to try different things and find out things you don't like and quit stuff, but it sounds like a lot of the things that you tried, or attempted, you knew that you were going to like, and you stuck with it, whether it be horses, whether it be reading, whether it be getting into politics or whatever the case may be. It seems like you are, when you dive into something, you really dive into it, which is not always the case for kids who are like, change their minds a million times about everything. Yeah. And it's not just kids who do that either.
And adults do too, but it's also a function of autism, because and I considered a benefit. I don't consider having autism a disability. It's just being different, but is I guess the technical term for it is monomania, where you just get fixated on one thing and you become an expert at that thing. But that makes autistic people great at some things like software programming. And there's a lot of things that require that kind of fixation. So I don't view it as a disability whatsoever. In a lot of ways, fellow autistic people off amongst ourselves and consider that kind of concentration level a superpower of a sort. But it also means I'm either all in or all out. Like when I'm done with something, it's not a trickle away. I'm done. Like once I decide I'm done, I'm done. When I stopped wanting to be in a band, I never picked up a bass. I was a bass player, never picked up a bass again. And I don't miss it. I did it for that period of time. And it's like I say to people about the LP, not that I'm planning on quitting, but if I ever did, you wouldn't see me lingering around sniping from the sidelines. I'd be too busy living my freaking life doing whatever the next thing was.
Sure.
You know, it's kind of like these ex-Christians I see that like are just constantly, dude, if you're an atheist now, great, go be your best atheist self. It seems like you're kind of trapped in your old Christian life. Like, I don't know, if there really is no God, maybe you want to spend your time a little better.
I mean, my theory is that it comes down to like, why do people announce when they're leaving a group or something like that when it's totally not necessary? If they weren't a huge part of it, if they weren't whatever, you know, what, like a lot of the times there's, okay, you don't have to announce that you're leaving. It's that it's really just people want attention, I think, more than anything. And like if you, for example, like you said, leaving a church or something like that, but still lingering around, it's because like that kind of is your social world and you're used to getting attention from probably that crowd to some degree. So when you leave it, it's like, okay, where am I going to get the attention from? Even if like I'm not a church person anymore.
Yeah.
People are
and
weird.
I understand people have gotten abused by religion. So I'm not trying to, because I have in my own sense as well. I ended up getting sucked into a very, very fundamentalist form of Christianity that wasn't good for me. I'm not saying it's not good for other people, but it was definitely wasn't good for me. But it didn't turn me like from that into atheist. I'm just now more of a liberal Christian. But my old fundamentalist friends probably think I'm a complete heathen right now. I don't care, because that's how I am. I don't care. Yeah. So that's interesting, but I've reinvented myself multiple times.
I'm sure, I gather. Are there any good kinds of fundamentalists, though? Isn't it bad to be a fundamentalist of any kind? Is it?
I don't know. I think I'm a fundamentalist libertarian.
Right. That's true. I guess it depends what it is. What is the definition of fundamentalist? Should I look that up? Does it?
Well, I think it's been warped over the years. It's kind of like the way the word radical.
Yeah.
I consider fundamentalist and radical two words that kind of mean the same thing, that have kind of been warped into like a bad thing. A fundamentalist generally someone who just believes in the basics without any accoutrements. You know,
strict literal interpretation.
Right.
That, what if you're a fundamentalist when it comes to righteousness?
Right.
Like that.
But fundamentalist religions tend to become very controlling and treating something as essential to the religion that wasn't really taught by the founder. So it can be very damaging.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Right. So that, comorbid with autism is a tendency. And again, my childhood probably had a lot to do with this. So I've had major depressive disorder my whole life. And I was in a Calvary Chapel church, which I consider a fundamentalist church. Some people won't, in Florida for about a decade. And they don't believe in like antidepressant medication and things like that. So I found that very abusive. And I was in a bad marriage and they don't believe in divorce at all. So I probably stuck around a lot longer than I should have. So in that sense, fundamentalism in religion was very damaging to me. Yeah. Though I think I'm more religious now than I was then. Then I think it was all about the rules, where now it's actually more about God.
That makes sense to me. I think that's a better way to go about things. Yeah.
But, again, my friends from then would think I'm a complete heathen because, then it was bad. Like you didn't drink, like it was bad. It was all, I think, outward appearance, And funny thing is, one of the things that got me out of that was becoming friends with gay people, because my church taught that was bad. But like I said, growing up, it's hard to be a racist if you're around Black people all the time and you see that they're no different than you. When I started to get gay friends and realized this doesn't jive with what I'm being taught, these aren't bad people. And that's actually what got me. I had a very good trans friend, And I started to get to know some gay couples, and I just couldn't jive that. It haunted me. The things that I was being taught at church were different from what I was seeing with my own two eyes. And I don't believe, and I know the fundamentalists will say to me now, your heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Well, if you can't even trust your own damn heart at all, like, how do you know that your heart's not deceiving you about this religion? Like, I don't know. There comes to be a sense where you got to trust your intuitions. And my intuitions told me that it was wrong to condemn people for just having different biological desires, and they're not hurting anybody. And they're obviously loving people.
Yeah, no, it's a shame that people get caught up in these like crazy, hateful ideologies or whatever the case may be. It's just so counterproductive to society at a whole. Like, live and let live. Is it that complicated? Be
Yeah.
tolerant of other people.
So a
Like,
lot of people, think I became very like pro gay rights and things like that because of my involvement in libertarianism. No, I actually was changing my mind on all of that. That's what got me out of fundamentalism, religion.
so this, you said this was kind of like after a marriage or whatever around that time. When was this? This was like during your paralegal career.
Yo, yeah, well,
After that.
I'm still, right now I'm unemployed, but I'm looking again for another job as a paralegal. So even though I'm doing like the LP stuff's all volunteer. So
Sure.
it's not, yeah. So I'm still looking for another job. I quit my job last year. I got married when I was 21, and I was married for 21 years. So yeah, during that whole period of time.
Yeah, and then you kind of went through another, I don't want to say phase, but a new chapter, a new era of your life where you're making new gay friends, and you're kind of like
Right.
reconsidering your feelings about God and religion and all these things. You kind of have these different like awakenings, it sounds like,
Yeah.
at different points in your life. Do you still keep in touch with that one trans friend or whoever that was?
No, because that was in Florida, and don't want to give much details about that because I don't want
Sure.
to violate that person's privacy. But I am sure if I ever was back in Florida, and again, trying not to give too many details again, because I'm not trying to have the token trans friend type thing. I'm sure we would hook back up. Both my husband and myself were really good friends with her.
Tell me about, how did you meet your husband? Was that because you're obviously now in Colorado? So I guess just kind of
Yeah.
continue on your journey from Florida, being a paralegal, getting
The
divorced, whatever.
my husband was the drummer in my band. My first husband was the drummer in my band. So that's how we ended up, getting together. And then we were married for several decades. During that period of time, he became a police officer, and we already did not, I didn't have the, you come from an abusive family, as they say, you end up in another abusive relationship. And so it wasn't healthy. And becoming a police officer didn't help. But I'm going to say something here that libertarians aren't going to like very much. Not that I'm a fan of the police, because I'm not. But seeing somebody go through the academy and then their first year on the job, I have some sympathy in a sense, because I saw what he went through and how damaging it is to a person. So during his first week, he came home just absolutely in pieces because they got called to some kind of domestic disturbance or whatever, and they had to clear the house. And there was this guy, I don't know, maybe he had a warrant or something, who just got scared and hid behind a curtain. So the police are clearing the house, and this dude is just hiding.
Another cop or the
No,
suspect?
somebody who, it wasn't even a suspect. There was just some disturbance in the house. They're like, everybody get out, without, I don't know all the details,
Yeah,
obviously.
someone was hiding in the house.
Yeah. And like, so my ex stumbles upon this person. And of course, the way they're trained, like everybody is a threat. And he just come home and told me, he's like, I'm screaming at this guy. It's my first week. I could have killed you, man. What's your problem? What were you doing? Like, he was like traumatized by the fact that he was probably seconds away, maybe from shooting somebody. And the dude, like, it was just weird. So I saw that psychological, impact. And they don't really give you counseling or anything for that. And then within the first month, he got called to another domestic disturbance call. And the guy who was fighting with his girlfriend ended up going out in the patio and blowing his brains out. And he walks in on the scene and sees brains splattered all over the place. Now, you're
Wow.
not going to tell me that doesn't damage a person. And they really got no counseling or anything for that. So I mean, he changed. We already didn't have the healthiest relationship. He had a very bad childhood as well. So I'm not even painting him as a bad person. We all come from wounded places. And I only want the best for him. But that really changed him as well. And things just got a lot worse from there. I think some of the dickishness you see in cops is a defensive mechanism.
I'm sure.
Some of the real horrible shit that they see.
Yeah, no, I don't envy them for having that job, and I don't want that job.
Yeah, and I'm not defending, believe me. And some of the things he turned into, I didn't like, and you do have to take some personal responsibility. Like you got to realize, hey, I'm turning into a type of person I wouldn't have liked before. But still, it's, as one of my pastors say, it doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable. It's always good to try to, you can still condemn someone's behavior while still trying to understand how they got there.
Yeah, I mean, not to dive too deep into the philosophy and what you may believe as well,
Yeah.
but I do think marketizing and privatizing the police in the long run is ultimately a better solution than having them work for the government directly, where there's no accountability and there's no real incentive for the government to care very much about the mental well-being
Yeah.
of police officers. Whereas I think in a privatized, more free market world of private security, there's incentive to like not have people with PTSD
Yeah.
on the beat and be like, oh, maybe you should take a few weeks off now. Maybe you should do this. Like,
Yeah.
we're not going to fire you. We're going to pay you. But like, I don't know. I think there are
Well,
like some solutions to at least
I
make
agree.
things incrementally better for everyone, cops and society.
And unfortunately, I think the way the current and I know good cops, so there are good cops. I'm not trying to demonize all police officers. I do think they should find another field because enforcing the unjust laws of the state, but not everybody's at the same point in their journey. But there's something about wielding the force of the state too that sometimes attracts the wrong kind of person to that job.
Yeah.
The exact type of person you don't want to have the force of the state.
Yeah, it happens with politicians too, the same exact
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah, usually the people I think you want to have that power are the ones who don't want it.
Yeah, why is that?
It's like when Ken Mullman, whenever he'd say, "Oh, I don't want to be chair," I go, "That's why I want you to be chair."
Well, yeah, it is. It's like people. I think I didn't come up with this, but like the best people, the smartest people, the highest quality people that we have in this country, they don't go into politics and they don't go into law enforcement. They go into other fields, entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
other more specified, fields.
Yeah.
So that there you go. The,
Yeah.
the politics and law enforcement attract the worst kinds. Take me from your post marriage and being a new person into I guess discovering libertarianism, because you said you were kind of a left-wing person. How did you were a left-wing person, then you became at least more like, I guess, like maybe
no, then I became totally right-wing because
a socially conservative almost, or a religious
because
type.
With Calvary Chapel, when you accept Jesus into your heart, you also accept the Republican Party into your heart. That's just the way it goes. So went from being very much more left to like even attending a Reclaiming America for Christ conference. Talk about cringe. We've all done things we're not proud of. That would be one of them. But I was more interested in it for the law aspect. Like there was a right-wing equivalent of the ACLU, and I like both spectrums of it. If you're defending civil rights, I like you. Like, I don't care. Like, I've always been very heavy into civil rights, no matter what side of the spectrum I've been on. I've always been a free speech absolutist. And that's just something because I've always been a bit mouthy, I guess. So after leaving, you know, in the midst of the divorce, well, actually, during the midst of the fundamentalist period, I just got totally uninterested in politics. So even though I was a card-carrying Republican, I basically didn't care, like, at all. And even back when I kind of cared, I didn't like care enough to be like educated about our system. I cared about issues, but like I couldn't have described to you, like, I didn't even know how like Congress was set up. Like, I know they teach you that in school and I didn't care, so I didn't bother to learn it. Like, it just, I learned it to pass the test, then it right out, you know, the other side. So when I got involved in the LP, I had to like learn how basic government works, because like I never really cared to learn. And I was like a Christmas and Easter Republican, meaning I voted in the presidential elections. And if there was some petition initiative that I agreed with, that's what I cared more about, was if there was some initiative. So by the time I moved out here to Colorado, which again was very sudden because that's what I do, like I did from middle school to high school, I decided I didn't like the way my life was going in Florida. I wanted to move out. My only requirement was that it have mountains. Colorado met that requirement. So I met my current husband online. I met him twice before I moved out here. I sold my house, moved out here.
So you met your current husband online while you were still in Florida. You guys were just talking.
Yes.
You hadn't met him yet, and then you
Right.
moved to Colorado.
After meeting twice. I flew out here once and he flew out there once. And then I sold my house and moved.
Wow. And I mean, did you guys know that you were going to be husband and wife at that point, or was it more like, oh, let's obviously?
No. I mean, that was the plan, but we only knew each other. I met him in December and I moved to Colorado in July.
Yeah.
So that was quick.
Yeah. Even if you guys didn't say verbal commitments, like seems like it was understood that this was going to be a serious thing.
Yeah, because we moved in together here. You know, we were both Christians of a similar mindset that had both come from, you know, not healthy marriages. You know, he was divorced, I was divorced. We had some similar background experiences. So, you know.
What's his name again? He's in the LP too, right?
Yeah, he's the state chair of Colorado.
What's his name again?
Wayne.
Wayne, that's right.
Wayne, shut the door. Wayne.
he thinks you're gonna be talking about him. So he was already in the LP, you said, when you he was not.
No, he was a Republican. I converted him to LP.
Well, you were a Republican too
but not I was, but Rhino, like it did, I didn't vote. Like, so are you really a Republican? I mean, that's what I registered as, because when you got a driver's license, they wanted you to pick something, and that's what I knew. But like, I didn't vote here at all.
So you both became libertarians in Colorado, it sounds like?
Yes, but I became a libertarian before he did.
And when was that? Because I saw you've been in the party since like 2014
September 17th, 2014.
Yeah.
There's my autism showing.
the exact day. What was the time? No, I'm messing with you.
Oh no, I know. I know.
I'm not surprised.
Lunch break. It was a lunch break because it was within the space of 15 minutes. Wayne went out to get me lunch. He came back and I was switched political parties. And he said, "You don't even vote." Like, what?
Well, what did inspire you to do that? Was it something sudden, or was it?
It was very sudden. If you think libertarians argue viciously, you haven't seen Christian arguments. It's vicious and passive aggressive. At least libertarians, I mean, they can be passive aggressive too, but they generally are very aggressive since they can't hit each other. So I was in a debate group with some Christians because I used to own a theology debate forum. That was my big thing. I've done a lot in my life.
I gather, and been through a lot too.
Yeah, I owned a theology debate forum, and I've written a book too, by the way, on Matthew 24. That's a whole other chapter during that religious period. And that book is still being used at Liberty University, from what I understand. So I was arguing with these Christians on Facebook, and conservative Christians, because that was the circle I still ran in, even though I was getting away from that kind of stuff. And there was a law, and I forgot what state it was in, where they were putting those spikes in the cement under overpasses so that homeless people couldn't sleep there. And I guess, my leftyism was coming out a little bit, because I was like, that's absolutely horrible. We treat dogs better than that. How can you think that's a good idea? And they were defending it, and it horrified me. And so they said to me, well, you just sound like a liberal. And in my circles, you would run away, like, no, like they just might as well have called you, like, I don't know, a serial killer or something. So in order to get out of that, I did what I like to call an ass fact, which is pulling a fact out of your ass. And I said, no, I'm more of a libertarian, which is a word I had heard, and I kind of liked the way it felt on my tongue, but I didn't really know what it meant. So I did that to get out of the conversation. And then afterwards, I remembered the last time I used a phrase, I didn't know what it meant. It turned out to be something rather pornographic, which is embarrassing in Christian groups to apply a term to yourself, which was really pornographic. So I said, I better look this one up, because I don't want to have that happen again. So I Googled the word libertarian, found the Libertarian Party website, read the statement of principles, the preamble, didn't make it even through the entire platform, opened a new browser tab and switched my voter registration on the spot, because what I read, my jaw just dropped. I was like, life makes sense all of a sudden. It really was poetry to me. And so I did. I switched my voter registration within the span of 15 minutes. Like, it was a light switch. It was like another, I don't like comparing politics and religion, but it was like almost like another religious conversion moment, like, because it was so sudden, where it was just like a lot of disparate beliefs I had all of a sudden made sense in a coherent picture. And autists like things to be systematized. So when I saw something that systematized it, it was like, come to mama,
And was it, I mean, I'm guessing it was also that you just simply didn't know that there was like another option. Like people
No,
just
because I
don't,
didn't.
you just don't, never heard of it, never saw it, didn't know it was a thing. Like, so when
No.
you see that it's a
Yeah.
possibility, that can be mind blowing in itself, just from not knowing something exists to like, wow, this is a thing that, and then a choice I can make for
Yeah.
myself.
And that would have been it. Like, I didn't intend upon like getting involved. I mean, because like was registered Republican and didn't get involved. So why would I think it would be any different? It would just be like, oh, I'll vote this way, maybe, Um, I ended up getting involved because of a damn t-shirt. So because Facebook knows all, somehow I probably joined some libertarian group or something. I don't think so though. But I got shown this ad on Facebook. If you join the National Party, you got this long sleeve black t-shirt that said Libertarian across. Anyone who's in the LP is like, I know that shirt. Well, I have a t-shirt fetish. So I was like looking at this ad going, damn, that's a sweet shirt. I want that shirt. So that's why I joined the National Party, just to get that damn black t-shirt. And I told them that when they called me too, and they asked why you joined. I said, I wanted the t-shirt, and that was the beginning of the end. And then my name got in contact lists, and I ended up getting involved with the Libertarian Party of Colorado, and then my life was over.
In a manner of speaking.
And yes, I used to sew. I had a sewing room, a beautiful pink sewing room. It's filled with libertarian shit now. You can't even find my
T-shirts, lots of T-shirts.
It's filled with my LNC stuff, pamphlets. It's like, oh my God, what happened to my life? My basement's filled with historical. This is all LP historical shit.
She's pointing at lots of books and boxes and bins.
Oh,
and
libertarian. No, all of this. This is all historical crap that I'm
paraphernalia.
presently working on. Like, my life has been absolutely taken over. Everything on my desk has to do with the LP.
You're fully immersed. When did your husband start to go along for the ride with you? Because it sounds like you obviously jumped in first and jumped right on the computer. When did he come on board?
I'm trying to think. So I went to my first LP convention in April of 2015, later in 2015. So maybe a year later or thereabouts. And I swear he did it like more because I was getting so involved, and he thought it was something we could do together, I guess.
I'm coming back to the thought, like, there's just no real, not explanation, but like, it's just kind of fascinating how people could come into this movement or the party or their own political views and movements through the most random ass things or
Yeah.
for inexplicable reasons. Like, you just, oh, I like the t-shirt, or your
Yeah.
husband being like, oh, she's doing it, so I want to like do it with her. I don't
Yeah.
care. It's not necessarily, oh, I have to agree with every single
And he still doesn't.
platform.
I'm far more radical than my husband is. And he was always politically interested, though. So he was an engaged, politically engaged Republican. Like, he voted, he cared about civic stuff. He was always far more into politics than I ever was, which is ironic now that, like, I'm now this political figure that has a Wikipedia page, like, but I'm far more radical than he is. He's not an anarchist. I know everyone keeps saying it's 6 months. No, it isn't. We've now been in the party together a long time. What's it now? He's been 7 years. I've been 8. No, he's not open borders. I'm far more radical than Wayne is, which is the opposite of the way couples usually are.
Is that, I guess, to each their own, but I think there could be benefits to that. Maybe even like just in a peripheral sense, so to speak, like to the public, to see like you guys you still are your own people,
Yeah.
still have your own thing and kind of and ideas, and can balance each other out. If you guys are at like a meeting together, like, people, they don't just, oh, we're just being bullied or coerced, so to speak,
People say that anyway. Like,
yeah, they think you guys are a team, like, so to speak.
yeah,
but
and
even
it's
if
not. Wayne, as chair, has only had his rulings appealed twice, and both times it was from me. I'm like, you're wrong, Robert's rules. You're wrong.
So he's the chair of the
Colorado party.
of the state party.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
I used to be the state secretary, but I was doing that just for a year. I'm not involved in the state party now. He's never been involved in the national party. That was always my thing.
Yeah, that must be cool for you to see him become state chair, and
Yeah.
to see you become national secretary. Like, how do you guys are able to like celebrate these successes together?
Yeah. And none of that would have, like, my former husband was super, super controlling. Like, he told me who I could befriend. You have no idea. Most people would not believe that I would even like tolerate that, but it was the religion thing. Wives be, subservient to your husbands. So like I was like full bore into the really conservative trad wife stuff with fundamentalism. So, he told me who I could be friends with, who I could talk to, like who you can smile at, like totally.
Wow.
Was not totally killed my personality, because that's just not my personality. It was very, very difficult. And people wonder why I cuss so much now. I'm like, I'm making up for 20 years of no cussing, so fuck off, I gotta get in my quota, because I was the good Christian girl. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't cuss, eyes of lowered, like it freaking Handmaid's Tale without having babies. It was, it was that kind of thing. So when I got divorced, all of a sudden I was like freedom type thing. And Wayne is the exact opposite of my ex. Like, Wayne supports like every single thing I do, where my ex was jealous of every single thing I did and just wanted me to stay home. And even though I, owned a theology debate forum, then I used to do a lot of debates. I was on a lot of even world famous radio shows talking about the subject that I ended up becoming an expert at in religion, because that's what autistic people do. He never even listened to my shows. Wayne watches every single YouTube show I do, and I'm like, some of them are 4 hours long, dude.
That is dedicated. That is serious dedication.
No, he's seriously proud of me. He seriously respects me, respects my ideas. And it's not just, oh, it's my wife, so I've got to listen to it. He's genuinely interested, and he lets me have my own life. And vice versa. And people get really triggered by the word let, but when you're a couple, it's just basic respect, I think. So he's very into hunting. I'm not. And I know, like, I'm so used to being so controlled and the jealousy of the first husband that like this lifestyle I have now would be completely incomprehensible to me. Like, you want to go for a weekend hunting with your buddies? Okay, when are you coming back? Like, there's no argument, there's no whatever. It's like, that's your thing, go have at it. I traveled every weekend this month. I mean, this year, up until Reno, traveling to state conventions by myself. Oh my God, that would have never have happened in my former life. Just no way. And he doesn't blink an eye at it. It's like, what time do you need me to take you and pick you up from the airport? So we both like are, we have a lot of separate independent things, but then a very close marriage. We've, how long have we been married now? I don't keep track of things like that. I know for women, I couldn't even tell you what day we got married. I'm not that kind of.
But you remember
girl.
the date that you joined the LP?
I do, and I don't remember the date we got married. I know, and it was because it wasn't a big ceremony. We had both done that. We just went to the courthouse on a lunch break. I know it was in January. It was literally, we just, and we weren't libertarians then. If we were libertarians then, we wouldn't have gotten state married because Colorado has common law and we would have just went that route. I so regret that. It's like, I couldn't have waited a year, then we wouldn't have gotten state married. But yeah, it's someday, it's the middle of January. It's the middle of January, and it was before I was a libertarian. So probably 2014, but I really honestly don't keep track. I can't tell you how old I am either. I know my birthday, but I don't know how many. I'd have to do the math. I don't care. I literally don't care. It doesn't matter.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, now I forgot where I was going with
No,
that.
I was
but yeah.
You're going. No, I was just gonna.
I know what I was gonna say.
Go. You go.
So we've been married nearly 10 years now, and we've probably had 2 fights, maybe 3. We just don't argue because it's very much, it's a libertarian, like, we're just like, you do you, we like each other. We don't have to like everything each person does, and he doesn't try to micromanage my time.
Are you able to resolve disputes or even conflict before they become arguments? Is that kind of a thing? Because obviously you're saying you don't agree on everything, but you're able to avoid the angry arguing, so to speak.
I had enough of that in the other life. I don't need any of that now.
No, I am super happy for you that it sounds like you're in such a great relationship and a stable relationship and a supportive one, and one where you guys have things in common but don't have everything in common, and agree on a lot of things but don't agree on everything. That seems like such a super healthy situation, and he seems like a great dude. I want to meet this guy.
He's a saint, man, because we're opposites. Like, I mean, not with libertarian, but like, I'm very
person has some personality things. Yeah,
he's very conservative, and I don't mean, again, politically, but you won't catch him wearing loud colors or what, that's just not him.
Balance each other out.
Complete opposite of me when it comes to that sort of thing.
Hey, but that's cool. Why don't you tell me about what you're working on these days? Obviously, you're a paralegal and you're the secretary of the National Libertarian Party, and obviously a lot of changes are going on throughout the party, especially at national, with the Mises Caucus essentially taking over the party. What can you tell us about what's upcoming? I feel like I know the answers to all these questions already, but like broadly for the audience, I guess, because we didn't dive too much into like specific political stuff, which is probably, I hope there was maybe something different or refreshing or interesting and not too traumatic to relive some of these memories, and I appreciate your stories, but tell me more about kind of what's going on in the LP and what's coming down the pike for you.
It's kind of somewhat important to understand a little bit the past year, which kind of everything seems to have coalesced into the past year, where I was really kind of thrust. It has been the international stage. A lot of people don't realize that when what happened with the corruption in the LP without getting too specific, and them trying to remove me and then successfully doing so, I was getting letters from leaders of libertarian parties all over the world who were absolutely and utterly appalled at what was going on over here. I know the leadership at that time didn't want to hear that, but they were just like, this is embarrassing. It was obvious to everyone outside their echo chamber that I was removed for being a whistleblower. And that is just so gross in a libertarian context. But in a way, now that, you know, on the other side, at least for now, because you never know what challenges life is bringing, I would have to say that experience was one of the most character building experiences. Like, I don't know if you saw any of the national convention or the nomination speech I gave, or things I'd been saying pretty recently on my show. But a lot of us will have convictions in our life, and fortunately, not many. But in a way, it's a blessing, but in a way, it's not. Do you ever have to face the test as to whether or not you actually believe what you say you believe? It's easy to say you believe in something. It's a lot harder to actually do it when it's going to cost you something. So during that whole period of time when I was exposing the corruption at the national level, I knew damn well it was going to cost me my position. And I knew if I stopped, I could keep my position. I worked very, very hard to get where I was at. I loved it. It was a party I loved. But there came a time where you either do what is right or you keep your mouth shut and keep things that are important to you. And at that point, I did make the decision that it was more important for me to do what was right, even though I knew what was probably going to happen. And it in fact did. And that was a hellish year for me. But now on the other side of it, I'm very, in some ways, grateful that it happened, because it's really character building to be able to live up to your convictions when it's going to cost you something. So, you know, now on the other side, getting vindicated is wonderful. But I do think I've grown an awful lot in the past year. But a lot of people ask me, looking back now, knowing everything, would you do it again? Yep, I would. I would probably be maybe a little less mouthy, because I super passionate. So sometimes blah, 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 blah. Everybody says things they regret. I probably say twice as many things as I regret than other people. That's just kind of how I am. That's not an excuse. It's just saying, I know that's one of my flaws. I can run away, but I also apologize quickly too. I say regrettable things sometimes, but when I know I'm wrong, I apologize. Yes, I would do it again. So, but that colors a lot of what I'm doing now. I'm supremely always in a state of gratefulness for being restored and being vindicated, because that's not something that happens to everybody. You know, that is also a gift. So I'm taking this third, second chance, whatever we want to call it, super seriously. I want to make this term really, really count. But when it comes to what the Mises Caucus thing is doing, that's my dog who likes to just bark outside, which if he keeps it up, I'm going to have to let him in, but he's adorable. I'm not, let me let him in. So I'm concentrated a lot on the back end stuff, which might not be quite as obvious or sexy to everyone else. So while Angela and some of the more outward facing people are involved in more of what most people would be familiar with the Mises Caucus's goals, with messaging and things like that, I'm trying to get back to where I was with Secretarius Interruptus, where I was trying to modernize our record keeping practices and do a lot of the administrative stuff that is not quite as publicly facing. So that's what I've been doing a lot of. And anyone who's paying attention to the L&C list could see that I have a lot of motions upcoming to substitute minutes, because some of the past minutes just weren't at a national level, just to be honest, not to point fingers or anything like that. They just weren't. And since my removal was voided, I'm the one ultimately responsible for them. I can't say, oh, so-and-so did them, sucks to be you type thing. Since it was determined that I never was not secretary, it's my job to make sure they're right. So I'm redoing a bunch of minutes and stuff right now. So that's the kind of background stuff that I'll be working on. It's more Angela and, you know, Joshua and those guys that'll be doing a lot of the more outward facing stuff.
Sure.
We're a hot mess in some areas behind the scenes. Like all of the records that I have to keep, you want to know where they're kept? On my computer, not in a party archive anywhere. Like when secretaries change, they got to ask their predecessor to transfer over the records. They're not on a party server anywhere. That's batshit insane.
Yeah,
So
I would
right
think
when,
so.
yeah, when I was getting removed, I was kind of putting into practice things that I learned from working in law on record hygiene and record maintenance. And I was putting that into place when that whole New Hampshire thing went down. So I'm going to be going back to doing that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, we'll be doing some outward facing stuff. Obviously, I'm always going to be a member rights advocate. But I think this term is going to, unless someone's going to my personal page and looking to start shit, if you're looking at my official stuff, I'm going to be like secretaries typically are, seen and not heard. You know, I've got a lot of background stuff to be doing. A secretary is a support role. It's kind of like the treasurer. You're not going to hear from them very much. And if you don't, that means things are in a good place. They're healthy. The fact that you heard from me so much the 2 or 3 years prior, it's because the LP was in a terrible place and no one was saying anything. And I had a big mouth.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, like, one of my joke campaign slogans, one of my real ones was make Caryn Ann Harlos secretary again. But one of my joke ones was make Caryn Ann Harlos boring again, because I really don't like being, if I wanted to be the center of attention in the LP, I would run for chair. I've never ran for chair. I've never really had, maybe once I had like a desire for one day where I thought about it and then I like the temporary insanity passed. I like the support role I'm in right now. So it's, if the secretary is the most visible person in your party at any particular moment, there's something wrong with your party. And it's not the secretary's fault. There's just something wrong. So I'm very happy right now to fade into the background as much as somebody with hot pink hair can, and let Angela and Joshua and the people that were elected to the more spokesperson-y roles do that. I'll obviously have my show and things like that, but that's personal to me. To me, that's not party. I do a very big divide between my personal life and the party life. The party does not own me, and they are not going to tell me what I can and cannot do in my personal life.
Sure.
Like, I had enough of that with my ex. Like, if I wanted to be controlled, I'd marry another police officer. You know, I'm not going to be in an abusive relationship with my political party, which was part of the reason I got removed. They were trying to control my personal pages. Nope. No, ain't going to happen.
Well, I appreciate, and we all appreciate your hard work behind the scenes, even though it may not be glamorous as you're describing. And we all appreciate you standing up for what is right and your whistleblowing ways against corruption, even in, like, because I guess people probably don't even think, oh, that, you know, who cares about a small third party XYZ? All political groups, all groups of people are not immune to corruption
Right.
or bad actors, and it's totally appreciated again that you call that stuff out, and I'm happy that you're in a role that you're pleased with, and I know you have a mountain of work and tasks and duties and
But
projects to
enjoy
work on.
it.
I gather that too, and that's great for sure. And I definitely appreciate your time and all the stories and really personal stuff. It means a lot to me. Like it's been spiritually fulfilling for me to just like listen to this stuff, even though I can't directly relate to every single thing, of course, that happened in your definitely unique life. There's definitely aspects of it where I'm learning lessons in real time from hearing you share your story with me. So again, thank you for sharing everything that you shared with me on this episode, on this podcast. Why don't you tell people where they could find you, follow you, anything else you want to mention? I'll kind of give you the floor to do that.
Oh, certainly. I mean, obviously, join the Libertarian Party. We're not corrupt anymore.
LP.org?
Yeah, lp.org/join. And actually, I know that kind of like almost seems like, you know, compulsed. Like, I have to say that I actually do. I'm very excited for the party right now. I think we are on the brink of doing great things. And there's been really never a better time to join in. Unfortunately, politics requires money. So the $25 a year memberships really do help. And for the people who can do more, that's wonderful. But if you're interested in the inside baseball type stuff, which I love talking about, but also history, the party history, that's more what I started my channel for, and I'm trying to get back to. I have a channel, Pink Flame of Liberty, on YouTube, and I stream nearly every day. I haven't been lately because I've been super busy getting back into the secretarial saddle, but I'll go back to doing that. And it's stuff you're not really going to get anywhere else, because it's very, very niche. So, I know the boomers on the last LNC thought I had a big channel with 3,100 and something subscribers. Like I kept saying, I don't want you guys to have a heart attack, so don't go look at PewDiePie. If you think 3,100 is a huge following, boomer, that's all I can say. Like, that's tiny. I know they're fanatical, and I appreciate, the very dedicated following I have, but it's small and dedicated. But it's people who really love party history and the inside baseball stuff. So Pink Flame of Liberty. And I every once in a while will delve into greater politics and relate it to the LP, but I'm very much an internal education type of person.
That's cool. And I think as the party continues to grow, coinciding with that, it's going to have more and more people interested in the details, into the inside baseball. And you are definitely a one-stop shop source for all that. So I appreciate more that
than you ever wanted to know. And I also have, which you probably know, I have a Robert's Rules of Order channel, where we teach people Roberts in a filthy way. So if you didn't think Robert's Rules of Order could be made filthy, I can make anything filthy.
Which is, of course, parliamentary procedure. Is that what I'm describing? Is that what you would call it?
So that's a different channel I do with a friend of mine, Mike Seebeck. It's called The Cult of RONR, for Robert's Rules of Order Newly Revised. So if you're interested in learning Roberts, but you find most of the teaching of it really dry and boring, this isn't dry and boring. We try to make it fun. And again, we try to tell dirty jokes about Roberts, which surprisingly is easy. And like one of the jokes we say, you'll appreciate this. Okay, so this is the dude, okay, who wrote the book. Like, not a real catch. He had children though, so I always go, incels, look, there's hope. This
Mr.
dude,
Robert.
This dude, General Robert, reproduced hope for everyone, because he was probably like, whatever, Mrs. General Robert, did you make a motion for that, ma'am?
Oh man, I can only imagine.
If that dude got lucky, there's hope for everybody. You don't need to be a Chad.
Good to know. I appreciate that personally.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's the type of stuff we joke about on that, but you'll also will learn Robert's Rules of Order, because I'm super into it. Yeah, we make it fun, and I am a registered parliamentarian.
Gotcha. And where can people follow you specifically?
On Twitter. Again, though, this isn't official party stuff. This is just me. Sometimes the party would agree with me, but other times it would not. And that's at Caryn Ann Harlos. All my social media is always my full name.
Gotcha.
So Twitch, except for YouTube, which is Pink Flame of Liberty, because that's kind of like a brand name. But Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, MeWe, like whenever I remember that exists.
Great. Good stuff. At Caryn Ann Harlos, Caryn Ann Harlos, Pink Flame of Liberty on YouTube. Definitely look that up. Subscribe to that. I appreciate your time. It's been a lot of fun. I'll let you get on with the rest of your evening. You're, of course, an hour ahead of me on Mountain Time. I'm on Pacific Time, so it's a little later for you. But I really appreciate it, again, all the stories, and we'll talk more soon.
All right. Thank you. You have an awesome night.
Oh, you got it. Later.
All right. Bye-bye.
So there you have it, episode 130, and my conversation with Caryn Ann Harlos. That was a lot of fun, and I really do appreciate her time. And it means a lot to me that Caryn Ann was so open and honest and forthright in our conversation. Her story is truly inspiring, and her energy and enthusiasm for life is just totally infectious. She's great. But anyway, for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's at People We Love Podcast. I am at Adam Choid on Instagram and Twitter. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.